Welcome back. It's Joe Volpe, the publisher of the Corriere Canadese, North America's only Italian language daily newspaper in print form. I'm here on behalf of Go Live and Corcan Media Group to talk about immigration issues as we've been dealing over the last couple of weeks. And as usual, with me to talk about the law and the reality of immigration issues is none other than Richard Borax, noted immigration lawyer who has a vast reservoir of experience in this area. He's also somebody who challenges the interviewer all the time on immigration issues. Now, Richard, we talked in the last couple of issues about the big impacts on immigration brought on by the Supreme Court judgment that says that the children's interest must always come first, and you cannot make a decision that runs counter to the interests of a child. Right?
Right.
So that was December, was it 10th?
10th, 2015.
All right. So it's something that started under the Harper government, has continued, obviously had an impact on the Trudeau government's direction to ministers about how to make interpretations, especially...
Well, it was supposed to have an impact. Impact has been precious small.
Okay, but the Supreme Court decision is not easily swept over to one side.
Well, what I wonder about that, Joe, because it's given it's a Supreme Court order, they've been trying to push it aside. They were expecting in a very grudging manner, unacceptable.
Well, but the point of the matter, though, that I guess we can continue talking about this part of it forever.
Sure.
But the issue is that whatever ministerial directives, whatever ministerial orders go down the line to all the officials who make decisions regarding children and families, they need to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
And there's no equivocation from the Supreme Court's point of view.
None.
Okay, thank you. So that was one.
Yep.
The other issue that we talked about is the immigration plan. Now today, as it happens, the Conservatives have come up with their own immigration plan. We can discuss that another time. But
sure.
So the immigration plan, as we discussed in the last couple of issues, is that for 2018, there are 310,000 anticipated applicants that would be landed.
That's right.
Now, there are various categories, but the most important one is that under those 310,000, there would be 177,500 of them as economic migrants.
That's right.
Now, the reason they would do that is because the whole rationale behind bringing people in from outside of Canada is that they will make a contribution to the economy of Canada, and therefore, secondarily, to the benefit of individuals like me and you and everybody else that's watching. They benefit whenever the economy increases. So that's the rationale, right?
Yep.
Now, 177,500, they have to be split. 20% of them go immediately to Quebec.
Yep. That's the bottom line. Canadian immigration policy, the bottom line commandment is Quebec must be happy. 20%.
Okay, the maximum then of that old total that would come to Ontario would be
40%
of 177,000, which comes out to just under 38,000 for the entire province.
That's right.
And then they fit a whole series of slots. In other words, they could be administration, they could be engineering, they could be service, or they could be, as we have talked about, skilled or semi-skilled.
That's right.
Which industry? Which industry?
Well, in Ontario, the skilled trades are the construction, the food service, and the mechanics. That's what the FSTP program, the Federal Skilled Trades Program, covers those three trade sectors.
So for all of Ontario, 38,000 of the economic class, I think we mentioned that only 4% are indicated for the skills and semi-skills.
That's right.
4% means that you're talking about 1,200.
That's right.
So if we're looking at the construction sector, now remember, there are 97 cranes operating in Toronto alone. So if we need immigrants, the government of Canada says, we'll go and get 1,200 to work in that sector.
Joe, you know, the Ottawa model, we've discussed this before, the cranes and everything, but it goes deeper than that, I think, more fundamental. 5% of the nation's workforce are undocumented.
Yeah, but the discussion that we've been having is how did they get there? So I asked
Well,
you, is it
they
4% that come into, for example, just the skills?
They get there because Ottawa wants them illegal. The Ottawa model, you cannot have 5% of your workforce. You can't have up to 50% of those crane operators.
And
or
the construction industry.
Construction industry altogether. You can't have 50% of the GTA's crucial construction sector. 50% has got to be undocumented in the most crucial province, the most crucial region, the most crucial industrial sector. 50% are undocumented.
Is that because they're only signing a total of 4% of that 38,000 that would be scheduled for Ontario's skilled and semi-skilled workers?
Absolutely. They have made a decision that they cannot fit in too many illegal workers in the construction sector in Ontario without knocking somebody out of Quebec, Calgary, Halifax, in the administrative sector. It says Ottawa plays a zero-sum game. If somebody wins in Quebec, if somebody wins in British Columbia, somebody must lose in Ontario.
But so you were shocked when I said this is sort of insane because, of course, when I was there, I wore a red sweater as well as a red tie, but it doesn't seem.
My condolences.
It doesn't make sense for just that sector, for example, to be able to say, well, you know, Ontario, you got 38,000 people.
But
that
Joe, when you were the big man and you're sitting at the big desk in Ottawa, did anybody ever tell you? Did those officials come and say to you, Minister, sorry, 50% of the GTA's construction center has to be illegal?
Well, I don't want to make myself out to be smarter than the next guy because I'm not. But
Joe, you were there. Now, let's not beat around the bush here.
No, you what?
Were you stonewalled? Were you stonewalled?
The minister's job is to ask. The minister's job.
Did you ask, Joe?
Always. Okay, so I wouldn't tolerate that. I'm asking you the questions precisely the way I was asking before. So you and the legal profession,
sure,
who have a habit of, well, you know, it's part of your practice. So I don't want to denigrate anybody.
Sure.
But,
go ahead.
No, but lawyers, they don't initiate policy.
We're not trained, Joe. Lawyers are not trained. The lawyers are trained. If you want to talk politics, rent a hall, but don't practice law.
Okay, well, that's fine. I'm not practicing law. So I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay.
And the question was, what happens when I was there or where any minister is there? My view is that when any minister is around the table, it's just like being a director on a board of directors. You ask questions. Otherwise, get the heck out of there. So if the bureaucracy said to me, you know, you can only have this much, my simple question is why? Why would I only have that much? I'm from Toronto, yes. I know that the biggest industry in Toronto, aside from the finance industry, is construction. There's no way that 1,200 workers identified by somebody in Ottawa is sufficient to satisfy the construction market.
How do governments get away with having 5% of the nation's workforce illegal? The illegal workforce in Canada is 400% bigger than the federal civil service.
Okay, because what's the size of the civil
happen?
What's the size of the civil service?
About 250,000.
Okay, so you're telling me that 250,000 entire civil service, actually it's just a little bit bigger, but it doesn't matter. Okay, that and the undocumented, i.e. illegal, irregular workforce is 1 million.
That's right.
Who says that?
The government of Canada says that.
So that's why you say it's 4 times the size?
That's right.
So undocumented workers are fit into the system because somebody thought that would be a good way to...
See, that is why when people such as you call these ghost workers, I ask myself, how can you have ghosts for every 4 ghosts, there's 1 federal civil servant. 5% of your workforce are ghosts.
So I use
Joe,
the term.
The question remains. You were in Ottawa on both sides of the aisle. You knew what was going on. Our elected reps know what's going on. How come this goes on year after year to the cost of billions of dollars a year in losses.
And we'll get to that billions of dollars now. But I asked
How do they
you
get
the
away
other-
with
Just
it?
a minute. I asked you the other day. You know, like I'm asking the legal
Sure.
community to come up with some answers because those are the only people that get listened to.
Lawyers don't come up with answers. They come up with problems. We're not in the solution
It's
business.
like social workers. I don't want to put them down either.
Let's not go down that path.
Okay, but my point
I got
was
one at
simply- my point was simply this. All right, so you've got an immigration plan that's built on some sort of model. That model isn't satisfied by the applicants that come forward, and I used to provoke you this business about 4% of the workforce. I didn't make up that number. I look at it
Sure.
in the government plan.
Yeah.
4% for skilled and semi-skilled. That's 1,200 people
But
for
Joe,
all of
the
Ontario.
cynicism.
Just a minute. 1,200 people for all of Ontario.
And how many do they need every year?
In Toronto alone, that wouldn't be enough to satisfy one construction site.
Here we go.
So I asked you, how do you go from not qualifying for that, if you can't meet all this, the checkoff list? How do you do that? What's the mechanism by which an intelligent immigration program would say, okay, well, let's bring in Richard, even though he doesn't satisfy
Joe,
the criteria?
The law exists, the program exists, the statute exists, the regulations exist. It's called substituted evaluation. It's in the law, and it's so simple. It says that if an immigration officer has a file and it looks as if this worker is paying taxes, he's successfully, economically established in Canada, then that officer can seriously consider allowing that construction worker, that trades worker, that mechanic, that cook to stay in this country as an immigrant and pay taxes officially.
So the government of Canada says that there are 1 million of them, about 400 to 500,000 of them in Ontario.
That's right.
And the reason I use the Ghost Workers program is because I had to attend a construction trade unions meeting where people were being frustrated because they don't know how to hide their workers. They say they don't exist. They're ghost
Joe,
workers.
another question from someone who's in Ottawa all those years. In Ontario, everybody is frustrated. The bosses, the workers, the government. We're losing billions of dollars. This is going on year after year. How is it that Ottawa gets away with this?
Well, I don't know. We asked apparently, indirectly, and we'll make it more formal again tomorrow, the Minister for Immigration.
Who happens to be from where?
Well,
The
just around the
Yukon?
corner. Just around the corner.
Around the corner.
Around the corner, and we'll see what he has to say.
Okay.
Well, to be fair with him, he hasn't received a written formal invitation. Just an informal one. We'll give him a formal invitation, then we'll see whether he answered that question. But as far as we're concerned, since you raised the issue of money again, if you say, these people are not paying taxes, maybe they are.
A little bit.
But in a construction business, what's the average per capita per family income?
85,000, I think.
Yeah, so if they're ghost workers, they're not paying taxes on that.
They're supposed to, but they're not.
Well, what's the average amount that you would pay on that?
Yeah,
At 85,000, what's the tax?
30%.
So you're looking at, do a real quick count, it's about $28,000.
That's right.
So the government of Canada is losing that money.
In Ontario, we've calculated a little over $1.2 billion a year, every year in Ontario.
In foregone
Taxes.
in foregone
Lost
tax.
tax money.
Because the 17% of whatever is raised federally also is
That's
then
right.
applied. Okay, so, but there's something else as well. There's also the social cost associated with putting people in a precarious environment. And that social cost, that's where you and I differ, I guess, a little bit. Because I think of this as an investment.
What do you mean by social cost, Joe?
Well, for example, if you've got kids of some of these undocumented workers, whether they're in the skilled, semi-skilled, or whether they're in a software, computer analyst business, there's a lot of those today.
A lot of
those today. But they're going to school. The government of Ontario is picking up the tab.
1.23 billion minimum year in and year out.
To educate those kids.
Educate those kids.
But I think of that as an investment. Why should that be a cost?
It's an investment if it'll stick around here. But once again, CBSA Minister Goodale, he has the legal responsibility that he's always talking about to kick these kids out of the country.
Oh, well, you saw
That's
we made
5,000 teachers, that's 5,000 classrooms, that's 1.23 billion every year, year in and year out.
So
We've got about $5 billion worth of young youth investment in this province that Minister Goodale is obliged to kick out of this country.
But he's not doing it.
Of course he's not doing it because
he's got the Bruno family that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. He's trying to get them out of the country.
I am tired of hearing Ottawa CBSA ministers stand up and saying that they're enforcing the law of the land, talking about the integrity of this system. They're there to enforce the integrity of the law, and they know darn well it's going to cost them $500 million to kick these people out of the province.
It costs about $5,000 per person to get them out of the country.
That's
okay,
right.
That's how much it costs. But Minister Goodale cites the act that says, I can almost quote it for you, we've repeated it so many times, that anybody who hires somebody without papers, encourages somebody without papers to be around, or induces, snubbing of the law, scuffing the law, so to speak, they're liable for $50,000 fine and or 2 years in jail.
That's right.
So those school boards that you're talking about, their directors of education, the trustees that take all of those kids into school, are they not liable? You're the lawyer. Are they not liable to charges?
It is so funny. They were worried when you were in Ottawa. The CBSA police actually walked into a school to follow 2 kids.
Boy, did that light my anger?
But
I wasn't their minister.
And the system, the educators in Ontario, they got so worried about them breaking the law that they actually amended the Education Act in Ontario. And to laugh or to cry, the Education Act section, I think 41 in Ontario, says that the kids of unlawful parents have the obligation to go to school.
Unlawful as in relative to their residence in Canada.
That's right.
But every
so here the province of Ontario, and education is a provincial responsibility. The province of Ontario had to cover its backside against the CBSA minister to protect those principals, to protect those educators. I don't think they did, frankly, but they try to protect them, that they won't have $50,000 fine and they won't go to jail because little Johnny is going to school.
Yeah, well, there's a certain obligation on the part of the government of Ontario. I applaud the government of Ontario for doing it, but I think it goes prior to 2000 and 2005
That'd be Ralph
or
Goodale has an obligation to walk into the classrooms and arrest those kids.
Yeah, provided the OPP doesn't slap them in jail.
Who?
The OPP.
Well, the OPP, because provincial policy is not to cooperate with Ottawa on immigration.
Well, that doesn't make for a very healthy confederation.
Well, this makes us like Bangladesh and East and West Pakistan.
No, we did a story on Bangladesh and all those people that are trying to put down all kinds of political activity. So maybe that might not be the best example.
When American jurisdictions and states, when they refuse to cooperate with Donald Trump and Washington on immigration, the Americans call it a spade a spade. It's called, who's running this country? Is it rule of law or some chaotic form of anarchy? And what we have in Canada is anarchy. What they
do now, with all due respect, it's a question of whether it's states' rights versus federal rights, and that's what they discuss all the time. And of course, the state attorney general says the importance of states' rights over federal rights.
No, you're wrong.
That won't be the first time in my life.
And even in Canada, aliens, although immigration is a shared responsibility, aliens from the planet Xeon and undocumented workers, they are Ralph Goodale's responsibility. Mr. Goodale has a responsibility to arrest 100,000 kids in the Golden Horseshoe. He has a responsibility to shut down construction in Ontario. He has a responsibility to shut down this city. Why isn't he doing it?
Well, because he wants us to keep going on this theme.
Okay.
And I'm so happy to speak on behalf of Corrida Canadese, Go Live TV, and Corcan Media Group. As you can see, the topic is a never-ending topic, and especially when you get somebody who has no regard for political affiliation or prior positioning, doesn't matter. But at any rate, as you can see, it's something that engages everybody. I hope that you're going to follow us in our next venture, where we're really going to go down, dig deep in those numbers.
Yep.
In fairness,
the more you dig up Ottawa, you dig a grave for Ottawa on this issue.
In fairness, to be equitable, for Ralph Goodale. Now, I said I'm going to invite Ahmed Hussein, Minister Ahmed Hussein, let's be respectful. And if he says no, we'll invite Minister Ralph Goodale. And if he says no, we'll fill in the blanks. Joe Volpe for Corriere Canadese, Go Live TV, and Corcan Media Group, inviting you to our next session of Law and Reality. Because we're on immigration theme, it's law and reality and immigration. But we talk about law and reality and everything else. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.